Go. Awesome. So thanks if you guys are good taking some time to fill that out. I'll put the link in the chat as well. And I can tell you, let's see, Nathan was asking me earlier about ages of kids, and I know that the Seagulls have a seventh grader and let's see, trying to remember, fourth grader, I think, if that's right. So those are a little younger, and younger kiddos with Jessica and family too. So thanks for being here, you guys. Give everybody a couple of minutes before we get started. Um, let's see. Looks like we've got about 20 people registered, so I think we'll delay a few minutes and see if we can get a few more people finding the link and corralling their kids and all the good things. Here is the link if you prefer to click it in the chat to our poll. And then also maybe tell us in the chat while you're here what types of devices you're using. That will help both Nathan and Caden from Bark understand a little bit more about how to advise you. Because, boys, how do we feel about Apple?
Are we starting the conversation on that? Is that what we're saying?
No. Thou shalt not grumble. We'll
All
do
right.
the best we can.
We work with them. We find ways around things. We'll just put it that way.
And so will your kids. So we'll start that.
Oh, I love that. That's great. Good. Somewhat unsupervised, a little structured. It's good. Some parents only, some parents and kids. That's a good way to describe it. I think in my home that I have some good supervision going, but I'm always surprised, and you just start to notice little bits at a time when you kind of walk up and you get a little tilt of the screen, or you think, wait a minute, but we have Bark. What are you doing? So over time, these things start to figure out. Let's see. More responses in here. Structured is really good. That's a hard one to figure out. Sarah says we use Apple for our kids, but we have things locked down pretty tightly. Gamers, I know that's going to be a big one. I've got one of those actually. I don't know how with 6 kids, I really only ended up with one gamer, but I've got one gamer and what feels like 12 TikTokers. So that's been a fun one to navigate. So both of these guys have taught me a lot in that space. And a few that have already been through that stage, thankfully, and they're done with it even before they leave home, which is a nice thing to not let them out into the world, into that space. Oh, Super Nintendo, good old Pac-Man. Kids and I watched Pixels the other day. It's such a good one.
And I will say, Sarah, there's not a lot of gamer specific content in today's presentation, but save those for the Q&A time, because if we want to kind of deep dive into that, obviously Caden's got interest and a passion in it. I've got interest and a passion in it. So I think we can speak to at least some of that if it's not covered in the presentation.
Yeah. And one thing Caden and I have been talking about a little bit, because we monitor so much of our back end, is sometimes even the gamer chats that are coming through, through their, like if they register for a game using their school account, they're coming through our chat filters. And so it's interesting to see how many ways, people can still get to your kids. You think, oh, they're on a game, they're not on social media, and they have a private setting or anything of that sort, but it's been really interesting to see. So, all right, I want to go ahead and get started, and we'll just send the link to folks that aren't here. And for right now, Seagulls and Heart Tats, you guys can have a great session with us, so you'll get to ask lots of questions. So let's just start by, I'm just so thankful. You guys know my heart for our school and the way that we believe that God created us to connect. So I just am such a fan that we actually have this technology and we're always teaching. We have so many classes at Valor that teach about, this is the current tool. So way back in the time, you talk about, can you imagine the first caveman walked into a cave and was like, oh, someone has written on the wall. Like, this was forms of communication, right? And people want to innovate all through time in the garden. And, God clearly created us to create and to connect with others. And this technology is now the latest form. So for us to just reject it as some form of wickedness or evil really goes against what he calls us to be as believers. Instead, to learn and embrace and understand and use resources like we have today to step into those places. So I think it's just important that we kind of preface this with our philosophy at Valor is really to invite in these opportunities to allow our kids to believe that, it's hard to teach them to have a heart of faith when we just put them in a bubble and tell them to reject the world around them. That's really difficult for them to develop a personal relationship with Jesus in that space. They need to feel our faith over what they're experiencing inside our world that he's put them in for this time. So I always get excited. I'm like, kids, you were created for a time such as this, right? So this technology it is a joy. It can be a weapon. And we just always appreciate any parent that is here today watching this recording that is taking the time to care about this and step into this place. The combined amount of hours that Nathan and Caden and I have probably put into understanding this, I'm sure is in the thousands, if not millions. And there are so many dangers out there, but being equipped and not living in fear around it is the greatest call that we have. So thank you for being here and understanding our kind of philosophy and mindset about it. And we just would ask that this time would be blessed and covered by the Spirit, and that he would move all of this wisdom into the home of everyone who joins and connects with us to ignite these kids into their divine potential with this great tool. So with that, I will turn it over to Nathan, and he's got some fantastic tips for you guys to walk you through some really practical advice of how you can navigate these spaces this summer.
All right. Well, thank you, Mindy. And I'm going to bring you all over to the presentation and attempt to get that full screen here.
Hey, Alan family, glad you're here. We're just getting started.
All right. Well, hi, everyone. My name is Nathan Sutherland. I'm here with Gospel Tech and very excited to get a chance to talk to you today. As you probably know, we're going to be talking today about how we prep our tech for summer. And it was awesome to see a little bit of kind of the conversation of who's here. We have some young people, we have some parents, we have some families. And this conversation is really going to be three parts. It is going to be talking about how do we prep our tech, how do we talk it out, and how do we walk it out. All right, so that's kind of the arc of this conversation. We do have time at the end for questions, answers. They can be something that we covered and you just want more detail, or maybe I skipped over it, or just something that you have a question on related to your technology. A little bit about myself. Gospel Tech is a ministry I started 3 years ago. It is literally dedicated to helping families connect the truth and hope of the gospel to our everyday tech lives. It was inspired out of my work in middle school teaching. I was a middle school teacher for a decade, stepped out of that to start a nonprofit focused on sparking positive purpose in youth. The nonprofit's called Flint and Iron. And then we spun off Gospel Tech as kind of the second ministry, because in the world of technology, as we'll talk about today, we need a gospel foundation to be able to truly make helpful and healthful decisions in it. So that's where we're coming from with this conversation. And yeah, I'm excited. And again, you can drop questions in the chat and stuff, and we'll try to address those as we either wrap up or as we go along if there's something super urgent. And here we go. So conversation for prepping our tech. We're going to talk about where, when, and which. Starting with the where, the basic idea is we look towards our summer, is this idea of our tech needs to be in public spaces. As we look at what tech we have in our house, as we talk about what our goals are for the summer and we prioritize our time and our resources, our tech needs to be in public spaces. Basically means it needs to be out of our bedrooms. So right now, if you're watching this on a laptop in your bedroom, that's awesome. That's really useful for privacy. We just want to make sure tech doesn't stay in our private spaces, mainly because it affects our sleep, first and foremost, and second, our safety. The more time we have on our technology, the more likelihood we're going to run into bullies or confusing big questions that need to be addressed in family and relationship, and generally have those in a trusting public location. We can return to that as we go through it, but what I'm trying to say there, I guess, is you don't need a $1,000 alarm clock. If you're going to have an alarm clock, you can buy one on Amazon. It'll be here like by the end of today's talk. So it can, we do want to make sure that we're making intentional choices. And as we look at the research and as we look at personal anecdotal experience, the downsides of having tech in the bedroom grossly outweigh the upsides that may occur for convenience and otherwise. So where our tech is going to be this summer, we're going to make sure it's all in public spaces where there's multiple eyes on the prize and where the use is just simply going to lean towards healthier opportunities. And when things do go off the rails, towards open conversations rather than towards kind of spying and snooping on the parent side and shame and shutting down on the child side. When we need to have a conversation about when are we using our technology. So where we know we need our tech to be public, but when are we using it? Well, if there was just kind of one rule on when to use tech, we just need to make sure it waits for us. The idea here is that tech can be amazing. As Mindy mentioned, it can be incredible at connecting us with others and bringing us closer and really leveraging the gifts and skills that God has given us. But it also has a tendency to tap us and remind us and notify us and ask us to give it more of our time, more of our focus, and more of our money. So we put tech in its proper place, as Andy Crouch says, with the TechWise family. If you've not read that book, it's one I highly recommend. It's encouraging and a wonderful entry point into having healthy tech conversations. But we put tech in its proper place, which means it helps us, and then we walk away. Right? And so this is what it looks like in my life. When we set up a win, we set a time frame for using it. So when I want to check my text messages, I say, all right, I'm going to check my text messages 3 times in a day. After I send the kids off to school, after I've eaten lunch, and after I have the kids in bed. And the idea there being, I'm not just checking it every time my phone buzzes or every time my watch notifies me, right? I have ring through set up. I know that that's a concern. Like, well, what if one of my kids has an emergency? Great. So the school phone number, when my phone is volume down and muted, school rings through, grandparents ring through, my wife rings through. So they know if they call me, my phone will go, which means if during this presentation, my phone rings, something's on fire and I have to go, right? Like, it's great because then I'm not having to check and be like, oh, another spam number. It's a way of being present and intentional and making my phone wait for me. And we do the same thing with video games or social media. I'm not just going to check my social media every time I think about it. I'm going to set aside time and say, great, between 4 and 4:30, I'm going to check my social media or whatever the time is for you. In my work day, I literally have a time set aside for doing work social media so that I can go to it, do what I need and walk away. And even with my job, if I can't do it in 30 minutes, I'm doing it wrong. So when we talk about technology, we're going to pick the right place to use it, the right time to use it. And then we're going to talk about which technology, because at the end of the day, we have limited time, limited focus, and limited money. As we look towards our summer, all of us have a goal for our summer, right? If I said, please finish this sentence, and I said, I want my summer to be fill in the blank, right? Actually, let's do that. In the chat, would you jot down the word? I want my summer to be like next September, when you're walking back into a classroom or you're coming back online for school, you want to look back and say, yeah, my summer was, what's the word you'd use? Thank you. Yeah, phrases are excellent. Awesome. Thank you. So growth and connection, fun, present, connection. Thanks. Those are awesome. So that idea then is going to direct which techs we use, because the tech that is going to allow us to reach that goal is the tech we should include. And if it's not helping us in that area, then we go, all right, well, this may not be the time or space to engage this technology. And that's what we're trying to get across here. Technology, as we'll talk about next, often has a goal of its own, and its goal is usually to take more of your time or to get you to come back more frequently. That's the focus, right? So if I'm not staying one time a long time, maybe I'll come back more often. And then at some point get my money or my data so that they can get money. But that it often has a second goal. And the reason that's important to know is that not all tech is created equal. There are actually two kinds of tech. So this is an aside from our arc of summer prep, but it's really, really important for how we're going to talk about technology with our children, how we're going to think about technology with ourselves. So there's tool tech and there's drool tech. These are not scientific terms you'll find out there. This is when you read the research and you get down to the user level and even the design level, the user design, UX design, you're going to find that there are really two ways of thinking through technology. Tool tech helps us create. So this is tech that operates kind of like a shovel. Probably the best examples that we would use on a regular basis would be something like Microsoft Word, a word processor, or something like an AutoCAD or Photoshop or Movie Maker, or it's even a video game creating program. You are doing the work yourself. It operates at the pace of your brain. It is very hard to get overstimulated using this because it can't move faster than you are. You're setting the goals and you're completing the tasks all on your own. It just does what you say. That's really important because Microsoft Word, for example, has never, when you were typing, sent you a notification and then said, hey, did you know that Johnny down the street already started his book? Did you know that it was better than yours? Here's an excerpt. Like Microsoft Word doesn't do that because it's not built for that kind of engagement. It's built to simply do what you want to do and to help you do it really, really well. So yeah, you can connect over the internet to editors in other states and countries, which is a resource I've used, right? You can make 3D programs for 3D printers or for design for work, right? Those are awesome tools, but it's different. That's tool tech. The alternative is drool tech. And drool tech helps us consume. That's not bad, but it is different. It engages us differently and it's designed differently for the user experience of that. And remember, the focus is consumption. And here are some ways. If the product has notifications, meaning you didn't ask it to do something, it's asking you to do something. It's got an algorithm-driven feed. That's really important because it's taking what you like, where you go, who you're near, your purchasing habits, right? Whatever it might be, your age, your ethnicity, it's taking all that information and then it's giving you stuff that's either going to make you really happy or really angry, because algorithm-driven information is usually wanting engagement. So it just wants you to share, to click, to text, right? Like it wants you to send this information out either because you love it and you're like, yay, this is good, or you hate it and you want other people to make sure they know you hate it. So that's consumption focused. Infinite scroll, if there's no bottom and you can just keep going, probably drool tech. If it involves likes and leaderboards, if it has followers, if there are artificial goals or quests set for you, sure, video games can be an example of this. Again, that's not bad, but it is important to note. But social media does it too. Snapchat, I think, is probably one of the more famous examples. They have streaks where they set a goal for you that no one ever asked for. No one said, you know what I want? I wish my social media tracked if I sent a friend a message every single day. Like no one asked for that feature, but it's really, really good at motivating users and bringing them back more frequently. And they're a publicly traded company. That's something that they report to their investors. So that is something they care about. If there's points or rewards, and if it somehow builds on just the basic human desire to belong and the fear of missing out, our young people will recognize that sometimes when they're not on social media, they're worried about what everyone is saying about them on social media. Not because anyone's actually talking about them, but because they could be, and we don't know, right? So there's this really urgent desire to get involved and go check it out, and it becomes consuming. And that is one of the problems with drool tech compared to tool tech. So would you quick in the chat tell me, is a nail gun tool or drool tech? This is my middle school teacher coming out, by the way. I can't help it. I see 3 votes for tool. Cool. Yeah, so it's tool tech, and you might be like, it's a trick question. It's not a trick question. It actually, I just really wanted a very clear example. I know it's not completely digital, but work with me, right? It's a tool. It's like a really fancy hammer, and a hammer is really just a really fancy rock tied to a stick. It is a tool. We're leveraging our ability to accomplish a task that we are doing, which brings us to the radio. What do you think for radio? Is it tool or drool? Everyone's like, my answers are logged forever in this chat. Yeah, right. Radio, I was going to put podcast, but I run a podcast, so it's a little too close to home. But the idea is, for many of us, radio is going to be drool tech. Podcasts, for many of us, are drool tech, unless we're using them, right? Let's take political podcasts, for example. If we are using them to inform our decisions, which means we're listening to a wide array of information, we're synthesizing it personally, and then we're applying that information to inform our decisions and the way we live, that's great. But if it's like the way most of us watch Netflix documentaries, where we watch it and then we go, that's crazy, and we bring it up at the water cooler, and it's really just a, hey, did you guys know? That's not actually tool tech at that point, because it's fun facts, it's infotainment, it's drool tech. Not bad, but we do need to recognize it for what it is, because it's designed usually for engagement, not actually for a helpful and beneficial building block for your processing. How about word processing? I kind of spoiled this one with my examples already, but that's good. That's part of helping us learn. Yeah, so if you use Pages, if you use Microsoft Word, it's tool tech, right? It doesn't have any of those engagement hooks built into it. Boom, spell check. I need that. How about a news feed? It could be your Apple news feed, could be an app that you open where you get your news, but a digital news feed. This one can be hard, right? Yeah. I would agree with Caden that it probably started out with really good intentions, but at some point the market has twisted to, it has the word feed in it. So we're literally being given information that is directed. When you open the app, it actually has your user profile and it gives you things it thinks you will be most interested in. It's not necessarily augmenting the articles themselves, but it's augmenting the order in which you see them and which ones get priority. So news feeds often are drool tech. Research actually tells us that most of us don't actually open the articles at all. We open the app, we scroll the headlines, and if we click on it, we spend less than a minute actually reading it. Most of them are 4 to 5 minute articles, which, by the way, is also mind-blowing that news is a 4 to 5 minute read. Anyway, that's a tangent for another day, but news feeds tend to be drool tech. We're not usually going to 3 or 4 different sources from a variety of thought on the same subject so that we can be informed and then apply that critically to our worldview. We just want the latest gossip, and it comes in snippets from whatever Yahoo or MSN news site that we choose, or Apple feed, or TikTok and Snapchat both have news feeds tied in, right? Like, that's usually where we get it from. It is important to know what it is. I believe reading biased material is great as long as we know that's what it is. And there's nothing more biased than a algorithm-driven, specific to you feed of information that it wants you to know. How about a computer? The devices we're all connected to right now. This one's tricky, right? So when I was teaching 8th grade, my district rolled out one-to-one devices. So we had 12,000 kids get laptops. And in 8th grade language arts, we were doing a January unit. I'm in the state of Washington, and the state of Washington is very dark and cold and rainy. So what better to do than really engage our grunge roots and go with just a super depressing reading unit. So it was all like To Build a Fire by Jack London, and The Little Matchstick Girl, and Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart. Like, it's just people dying in terrible ways effectively for a month. So if I'm in the middle of this unit talking to young people and there's a folder that says shared folder, open Jack London about a guy freezing to death in the Yukon, and right next to that folder is Minecraft, because we had PCs and Microsoft had spent $6 billion on that game. So they just came with all the game installed on all the school computers. So which one would your average 8th grader click on if they were opening their laptop and told, well, I have a picture somewhere, not in this presentation, but of 3/4 of the class chose Minecraft. And so I'm in the back of the room, all the laptops are open, right? And you can just scan the room and see Minecraft. And that is part of the conversation, right? It is how we see, I see multiple people say, depends on how you use it, both, because it is simply a portal to information or a portal to entertainment. And it does depend on how we use it, which is really important for today's conversation of what we're doing. So our takeaway right now is that we're going to use all of the tech that helps us hit our summer goals. That word you said, I want my summer to be about connection, to be about fun or about excitement or about being present. That's awesome. We're going to use that good tech, and any of the tech that's a distraction from that, we're going to replace. And we're going to remember that there are two kinds, right? So watching a family movie, sure, it's drool tech, but maybe that fits our goals for this summer. I know I will be watching some summer movies, right? That's going to be part of what me and my family, I've got 3 kiddos, 3, 6, and 8. We're in that wheelhouse of awesome movie watching. We're watching Paddington Bear sends them into stitches. They just lose their mind, right? So it's super fun. They get the belly laughs, and I love that experience. It fits my summer goals. We'll keep that in mind as we're talking about what tech to use and how. So we are prepping our tech for when we use it. We're going to make it wait for us, where we use it in public spaces, and which tech we use, tool or drool, based on our priorities and goals for our families this summer. All right, now we got the words to use. Now we're going to talk about how to talk it out. So there's really 3 levels of talking it out. The first level of talking out is going to be simply approaching our children and asking them, what do you like? So in talking it out, it means that we have this great information, right? Tool tech and drool tech, it's helpful. It helps us talk to our young people when they say, well, can I go play this game or listen to this music or be on social media? It gives us that talking about, like, you know what, that's actually different than this tech over here, because you can't get overstimulated when you're on Microsoft Word or when you're designing that movie or when you're creating that video game. It's actually very different from playing that video game. So we have that conversation. Now we want to get into their world. It's a huge part of loving our children well, is recognizing what's important to them and not simply giving it to them, even though we love to give our kids good gifts, but trying to understand, what do they love about it? What about this clicks, and why are they wanting to use it? So the first thing we do is simply just go, what do you like? And some of your kids might push back on this and go, you know what? I feel like you're prying. So a great way to approach this is actually ask, what do your friends like? Right? So what games are your friends playing? What social media are your friends on? That's a really simple way to get the conversation rolling. And by the way, even if your kiddo doesn't have social media, they will know which apps and programs they like more than others based on just what their friends engage with. And it will be an eye-opening conversation. The second level of it is asking them to show us something. So again, we're just trying to engage our kids on a tech level. Many of us, we don't know the tech. Someone, before we even started, like, my kid built his own PC. He's way smarter than me. And we have to assume that. Actually, Bark is here tonight for that very reason. We're going to assume your kids are smarter than you. They know more tech. They know more backdoor ways of getting in trouble if they want to. Our job tonight is not to have all the ammunition to win a tech war, or for me to somehow mediate a tech battle or argument you're having, and to step in and say, no, you win, raise your hand, and somehow that'll solve stuff. Instead, the conversation today is, all right, I love you, child of mine. There are some concerns about technology maybe, or just worries, because tech is scary. Even if it's not being misused, there's a lot of things that can go sideways. So what do you like? What are you into? What clicks with you? And can you show me, right? Can you show me that game? Can you show me your favorite character in that show? Can you show me that album you really enjoy because you're into music, or whatever it is? Asking them about their world. And this is often something that clicks very quickly, and they are more than willing to start talking about, which brings us to the third is, can we do it together? So we've asked kind of the big picture. What are your friends into? What's that look like? Just generally being curious. Could you show me that? I have no idea what it looks like. This is where being completely out of the loop really helps you, because you're not being conniving. You're not looking for like sneaky things. You're not investigating or interrogating. You're simply being curious about your kid's life. And the third is, can we do it together? Because if your child has access to that technology and they're living in your home, it means you've given them clearance. You trust them. They've earned that in some way. They've been faithful in those little things like doing their chores and showing up for dinner, and having a heart that is gentle and soft. And now you're going to go into that world with them, because there's not a lot of times in life you would just send your child into crowds of strangers and just let them linger. So they shouldn't do that digitally either. You can go with them into the games, into the shows, into the music, and have more questions. There, of course, is always the opportunity, parents, for you to intervene and say, hey, I know you love this. I saw some things that were concerning. Let's talk about that, right? Like, it isn't just walk in and everything's groovy because you don't want to be the big bad wolf. Like, you're still the parent, but these are opportunities for you to love your child well. It's loving to intervene if something dangerous is going on, right? Just like with the person they're dating or the places they're going. If it's dangerous and unsafe, we intervene lovingly, not with judgment or, I guess, punitive attitudes, but a loving, focused, Christ-like attitude. And doing it together is going to do more than just show you why they like it and what they're doing. It's going to expose you to a shared relationship and a shared experience in that thing, right? So my dad wasn't into video games, but he would come in and attempt to play. By the way, would always get motion sick within 15 minutes, but would keep asking questions and let me just babble on about whatever I was excited about, right? And that it's just another tier of building ethos, of building that trust between parent and young person. So some examples to get real specific. I want to give you the words to say. Let's look at video games. First, what games do you like? That might be enough to send a kid off on a tear. I was at a Young Life camp as a leader, and we were hiking this hill up to like this view where they're going to do an evening talk. And this young man was like, I can't make it. It's 1.5 miles uphill. I would never hike that far in my life. We're not going to do it. Turns out he's a big fan of Dragon Ball Z. I just asked him, what shows do you like? Dragon Ball Z. And for the next 40 minutes, that's all I got was just Dragon Ball Z, right? Which was amazing because it told me about a passion of him and coincidentally took his mind off the hike. And that's what we're doing with our young people, right? We are wanting to know them. We're wanting to get their minds onto something they're passionate about and hear more about it. Favorite boss, if they're a gamer, they're going to have a favorite level, a favorite boss, a favorite challenge, something that they're proud of accomplishing because it's why they game. So they'll have that thing. It may not be that specific, but a favorite something or other, favorite loot. And the third would be, can we play a level together? If you're feeling really brave, you can go say you want them to train you how to get a solo win in one of their online games if they're into first-person shooters. But the idea here, again, isn't that you're going to be a pro or you're going to beat them or any of that. It's simply the shared experience of this is important to you. I'm going to be a part of this. Again, I'm assuming that you've allowed the video games because you've had a healthy tech conversation. If it's unhealthy, this is still really important. We'll get to that in a little bit of how we can, if things start to feel off, how we know if it's just us not understanding or if there's actually something wrong, right? When we talk kind of parental spidey sense, similar with social media. What app do you like most? Or what app do your friends use the most? Even, I'll repeat, even a kid who does not have social media from you is around it, especially by the time they're in upper elementary and middle school. Their friends are on social media. They're hearing about the apps that are out there, and they're going to be aware of what is going on. So maybe they don't follow someone specifically, but who do your friends follow? Who's the person making waves right now? It changes frequently. I found to the point where just a couple years on, like someone who's still a really big deal, the next, it's not even a generation, but the next iteration of young people, right? The new 8th graders 2 years later don't follow or even really know about that other set. Who you follow is actually really interesting as well, because it's going to tell you something about your young people. A kid who's into video games won't know the big names in necessarily anime or in sports. And a kid who's into politics may not know the big person in baking, right? So it's just another layer of getting to know your child and where they're at. And then can we scroll through it together? If our child is on social media, we need that opportunity to share the experience together. I'm not telling you to spy on your child. In fact, when you get to your BARC presentation here in a few minutes, they do an amazing job of giving accountability without the creepiness and still allowing that layer of trust to exist. So the scrolling together is not so that you can get access to all their messages and start creeping on their friends, but it is so that like if their friends came over, you would probably hang out in the room and have some questions, right? Like, you'd be like, hey, what's going on? What are you guys into? What's fun right now? What do you do? Like, you would just get to know them. And similarly, they're building all right. On social media, some of the relationships are what they call parasocial relationships. It's the one-way thing. Like, I like the characters from Friends, but none of them know me, right? So I have this nostalgic affection for like a Joey, but Joey doesn't know me. Actually, he's not a real person, and the actor doesn't know me. So we get those. It's important to know together, hey, who are you building affection for? Who are you kind of setting your heart and your mind on? So that's the heart behind these questions. And I hope that comes across clearly. And young people, I hope you're hearing that and can even maybe offer these opportunities to your parents, because some of us are nervous about seeming like we're prying or just looking dumb, because frankly, we are. We don't know everything that's going on. And parents, that is the point, is acknowledging that. Aha. And if you're really brave, go ahead and join in that TikTok dance. You can't lose. What's going to happen? You look dumb? Like, great. That's always a win. So to review, when we go talk it out, we know the terms, we've prepped with our goal, we have our priorities for our time and our focus and our money. And now we're going to apply them. We're going to talk to our kids about tool and drool tech, trying to lay out that idea that there's tech that helps us create and there's tech that helps us consume, and they're designed differently. So we're going to treat them differently. We're going to be curious. We're going to ask questions, not to pry or win, but to know our kid better, and therefore to be able to love them better. And we're going to engage that tech with our kids. It's just I guess an important step as a parent to go where the kids are and to win rapport that way, right? That concept of earning the right to be heard, right? We have a biblical right to speak truth and to love our children well in action and in word. But then there's the winning the heart part, and going where the kids are. It's a very Jesus, very biblical model. And we want to make sure that we are doing that and not just always expecting them to come to us, which brings us to, all right, we've got our words. We've got some like specific phrases to use. How do we walk it out? How do we apply this in the dirt and grime of the daily life of technology and raising kids? And I don't want you to hear that this is easy. But it is simple. I guess I'll say that. Chess is simple, right? In terms of how many pieces there are. It's not a hyper complex game, but there's a lot of iterations of those 9 pieces, or not 9. Now that I'm thinking of it, 7? I'll say 7. I think that's a better guess. But that idea. So when we get into this, I'm not saying if you're not doing this, you're off track. I'm saying these are loving steps we can all take. Pick one and begin this journey of walking out. The first, I like calling this building a hedge. We need a hedge. We need this distance between danger and our children in the digital world around our home network and around our personal devices. By that, I mean home network. If your house has internet and it's not because you plug into a wall, that's your home network. So your home network needs a layer of protection. This is just part of the cost of doing business with technology. If you have no technology in your home, that's cool. As soon as you get something wirelessly connected to the internet, you need a buffer, because mistakes happen. They just will. But accountability is critical to helping mitigate the damage of that, and to be loving in the face of that. We can't just expect our children to self-report every single time, because as humans, one of our main things is, even if we're curious, even if we did it on purpose, even if we liked it, we clam up and we hide it, and we know instinctively something went wrong. It's Adam and Eve in the garden, right? Something's off. Let's go hide, right? We don't have any words for it, but we know it's not okay. And when God comes looking for us, we're going to be over in the bushes. That idea. So Bark is actually an amazing option for home network protection because it can follow the conversations. And I'm not going to take all his thunder, but Caden's going to do a great job kind of explaining what they do. But the premise is, without being overly invasive, it'll pick up web searches and conversations and your general activity online, and help ensure that that is all accountable without being creepy, and something like a Griffin router. So I'll drop links here at the end, but the Griffin router, I was also notified that Bark has a home device, but the Griffin router is one that I am familiar with and does an amazing job, both for privacy protection, for like personal encryption, if data is important to you, but also for parental settings. There's a very easy to use app, and I'll actually include a link that will give you kind of how to set it up if you're interested in that. And if you don't know what a router is, it explains that, but basically it's the thing that gives your house internet. So you have one if your house has internet, and it'll help you protect everything from a smart TV to a tablet to that old cell phone that doesn't have cell service anymore, but still gets on Wi-Fi, to e-readers, to anything that gets on your internet. Friends' phones that come in, or friends' devices, gaming consoles, all of those things have the internet through your home Wi-Fi. And there needs to be a layer of protection, not because you're scared of the internet, but because you're aware of what's there. And you are lovingly intervening and being intentional in that conversation, which brings us to personal devices. Bark is also the option for this. Personal devices is anything that has its own cell service. So if you've got a smartphone, if you have a tablet that has cell service, That thing has access to the internet, and it needs someone else looking at that content. Adults, this goes for us too. Our devices need to be accountable, because as Chris McKenna of Protect Young Eyes loves to say, if you're fighting any battle on your own in the Christian life, you're going to lose. That's simply not the way we were designed to fight, and it's not the way we were called to fight. So we need to fight as part of a community, and accountability, digital accountability, is a loving way to do that. So personal devices needs another set of eyes. And that's, again, this is not protecting our kids from all the bad stuff out there. If we're giving them a smartphone, if we're giving them the internet, we're assuming they can make good choices and they can process what's going to happen when bad stuff happens. The question is, all right, when it happens, how do we know? How do we support them in that? And how do we help make sure it doesn't happen the same way again? That's what these do. So the first thing we do in walking it out is we lovingly build that hedge around our technology. Second is we know the limit. So this gets to what I'd promised earlier of, hey, my kid plays video games. My kid's on social media. My kid is on the internet. How do I know if it's a problem? Right? Like, how do I know I'm not just that old person yelling, get off my lawn? Right? Because I don't get it. And it's not something I'm into, but my kid's really passionate about it. A young man who builds his own PC so that he can have a sturdy gaming system may not be on the same level as his parents. That's okay. But how do we know if it's healthy? It's a really simple acronym. It's called a reset. And the reset stands for, does this tech, or I guess I'll get to that. The question is, does this tech impede or improve my child's relationships and responsibilities? Does this tech leave more of my child present when they are done using it, or less of my child? Right? There are their relationships and responsibilities, their family commitments, their school commitments, their church commitments, their club commitments, right? Does that increase? And they're actually better at all of that because this technology. So it's actually connecting them with friends. It's connecting them with resources. It's engaging those passionate parts of them for making and asking and learning. Super cool. But if you find that the relationships and responsibilities start to get delayed or overlooked or simply dropped like they're hot because all they're interested in is this other opportunity, that's concerning. So we simply note it. We ask the question, does it impede or improve our emotions? Are their highest highs and their lowest lows directly tied to their technology? I'm not talking disappointment, like, oh man, Friday is my time when I can play video games, but my sister has a swim meet, so I got to go to that. I'm bummed. I'm not talking about that. We're talking about, I'm demanding more time. You guys hate me. Life isn't worth living, right? Like, and that might sound over the top if you've never experienced this, but it is more common than I'd like to acknowledge. Emotions are important. And again, we're just acknowledging this is directly tied to technology, or it's not. If it's not, cool, we skip it. If it is, we make a note. The third is sleep. Again, if devices are in the bedroom, sleep is impacted. So we ask the question, is our technology impeding or improving our sleep? If there are, I don't even know how tech would improve your sleep, maybe like a sleep app. Or I know like one young lady, I guess, who is diabetic and has a digital monitor, and it can send notifications during the middle of the night to the parents if her blood sugar drops too low. And so that is a huge sleep aid for the parents, that they're not waking up in the middle of the night, setting a timer and having it physically come in. They can hear the alarm go off. So I guess that would be a sleep help. But impeding 99% of the time, if you have specifically drool tech in the bedroom, it's getting in the way of sleep. Kids are waking up thinking about it. They're waking up to message somebody. All of us are doing that, right? Oh, I just remembered that one thing. I'll just make a quick note. And you turn your phone on and you jot it down. We could easily replace that with a pen and paper or pen on your hand, which is something I do. So sleep, our enjoyment, again, like emotions, this is where it becomes the apex of all the enjoyment. The things they used to be passionate about start to dwindle, and this technology engagement begins to become the ultimate thing for what brings them excitement and joy. And we look at it and go, well, that's so good that they have this thing they're passionate about, but if it's overshadowing all of their other God-given passions and interests, and those things start to wilt, we do have cause for concern. And finally, our time. I would say this is, I guess the simplest way to put this is simply, can they be content? Can we be content, right? That 30 minutes of social media. All right, let's do social media. You get 30 minutes. And if they lose their gourd because, well, I need to check it more often than that, or I need more time than that, then there's something else other than social media going on. And we just need to have that conversation, because it can be a really cool way to use technology, but there's many young people who wouldn't be satisfied with a public space to use it and 30-minute slots. I'm not talking 30 minutes in a day in 3-minute increments 10 times where you can just check it and check it and check it and check it. I'm saying no, between the hours of 5 and 5:30, you can check your social media. And if you didn't make it in that time or you didn't quite get done, you'll close it down because guess what? You get 30 minutes tomorrow. And training ourselves on that is going to do two things. It's going to expose some issues that may not come up because the young person may not even know about it. They may not know that there's this underlying desire or urge. And it's going to expose some of the design mechanisms of some of these apps. I mentioned Snapchat with the with the streaks. They also have a delightful feature called being left on read, which means someone messages you, you read it, it shows a red notification, like literally a red dot, saying that you saw it and then didn't write them back. And it's traumatic. You talk about FOMO. That young person often assumes that you just don't like them now. And I don't know why, but it's where we go. So we have to know our limit. We built our hedge and we have to know, is tech healthy? If you look at your young person and you say, hey, tech absolutely improves. It does not impede relationships and responsibilities, emotions, sleep, enjoyment, time. Thumbs up, gold star, your kid's on the right track. Keep doing it and that accountability in place and keep the conversation rolling. If, however, your young person saw this, or you see your young person, you go, oh, you know what? Every time they're on that game, every time they're on that app, every time they get off that social media, every time they get home, the only thing that makes them happy is that Reddit thread or whatever it is for them. Now we have a spot for conversation. I'm not going to say the tech is the reason for that. I'm going to say that's the spot you start, because tech can kind of be a pebble or a blister, right? The pebble is my 3-year-old is running around outside. She goes, Daddy, my foot hurts. Pull off her shoe and there's just a rock jammed in her little chubby foot, right? I throw the pebble out. She's fine. Sometimes that's tech. It's the problem. We remove the tech. Kid does awesome, right? All the passion and interest and joy comes right back. Sometimes, however, we see this issue. My 6-year-old came up to me and said, Dad, my foot hurts. Pull off his shoe. Well, he'd been running through the sprinkler with no socks on. He's got a silver dollar-sized blister on the bottom of his foot. That's a different solution, right? The rub is actually causing the problem. I can't simply remove the blister and now we're fine, right? This is a longer healing process. And with technology, sometimes it's just symptomatic of something else going wrong. So remember that with your young person. Maybe it's bullies, maybe it's emotional, maybe it's mental health, maybe it's whatever, right? Maybe it's a series of unhealthy choices that have led into this place, but it's not this tech specifically. Reset isn't there to diagnose. It's simply there to assess where to begin a conversation in love and engagement. All right. So we know our limits. Reset is a helpful way to do that. And finally, we have a clear standard. We need to be able to communicate with our young people what we watch, how and why we act online, and the impact tech has on us. And this is overwhelming. Like when I started this work 3 years ago, I was like, great, we'll make a standard for parents. And then I was like, I don't actually know how to do that. Like, I don't know where to begin. Like my thoughts on tech can be so different from other people's thoughts on tech, even just down to like what types. Like some people like don't ever play a game, or some people are, social media is the only way forward. And I'm like, I don't know how to do it. And then I realized, this is why we need gospel tech, because actually as Christ followers, the gospel gives us a really clear path forward. So I'm going to use Ephesians 2:1-10. I'm bringing up some verses here. So they'll be linked, I guess, in the bottom, but I'm not going to bring them up right now. The Ephesians 2:1 sets out the problem of the gospel, which is that we're sinners. And we're not just sinners on accident, but we are sinners rebelling against a good and just God, taking the gifts he's given us, taking the life he's given us, taking the joy he's given us, and using it for our own pleasure, right? That's the problem of sin, is we're Eve. We're not saying, well, God, you're bad. We're going, God, you're fine. And I really like the stuff you've made. I just think I could do a little better. So I'm going to run with it, right? That's sin. And the bad news is we are all sinners, and it kills our joy. And eventually it kills us, right? It grows into these toxic situations in our lives. Even with our best intentions, it crushes us. But there's good news. The good news is Ephesians 2:4, but God, being rich in mercy, because of the great love with which he loved us, sent his son while we were still sinners, by the way, not because we're awesome. And he's like, you know what? You guys all made the cut. you can be on my intergalactic kickball team. He goes, no, 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 you guys are sinners and you absolutely deserve judgment. And yet, if you bend your knee and repent, I will not only forgive you, I'll give you full inheritance. I'll fill you with my Holy Spirit. I will tabernacle within you and go everywhere you go, but you're not saved from the world. And this is what we have to drive for our children. This is what we need to remember for ourselves. We're not saved from the world. Ephesians 2:10 actually tells us that we were saved for good works that God prepared beforehand for us to do. You're saved for the world, not from it. So when we get saved, it's not just a golden ticket into heaven. It's actually empowerment in this life to live out the calling God has given us online, if we're called there, right? In person, when we're called there, we're really told to do three things. Jesus gives pretty simple instructions. Love God with everything you are, your heart, soul, mind, and strength, Mark says. Heart, soul, mind, and strength is everything you are. So you're going to love God with that. And love your neighbor as yourself. Actually, in Matthew, Jesus says that encompasses the entire Old Testament, all of the law and the prophets, those two things, which, by the way, you can't do those two things without Jesus changing your heart. And then he gives a third one in Matthew 28 that says, now go and make disciples, not converts, disciples, people that love Jesus. And we start with our children. That's what Proverbs 22:6 is talking about when it says, raise your children up in the way they should go. That's what we're doing. We're discipling them. We're not giving them good rules and saying, now go follow them, because we don't follow them. That's what Ephesians 2:1 is telling us, is that we actually do a terrible job. We need a new heart. Now, I tell you all of that so I can tell you this. There's a gospel standard for tech. What we consume is absolutely addressed. What we do and say is absolutely addressed. And the impact it has on us, a nice way to kind of team up with the reset. It's actually a biblical concept. And I decided that I would include them in their entirety. First, what we consume. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable. If there's anything excellent, if there's anything worthy of praise, think about these things. Just apply that to like the shows we watch. And like that's convicting. And that's not a suggestion. That's a standard that we're given for our music. And it's not to be legalistic. It's to have the conversation of why do I want to do this, right? It doesn't mean only engage fluffy conversations. There's some nitty gritty stuff out there, and there's movies and games and music that address it in real ways that are loving. Cool. But let's be intentional on why we're consuming it and how we're consuming it. We also want to be intentional with how and why we act, right? So we have a standard for what it is, but why do I want to engage it? Well, is it loving? Like there's actually a standard for that. Loving isn't just warm fuzzies. Love is not just a high five emoji. Love is patient and kind. Think about this. Like, think about if our Twitter, just Twitter, if that's the only thing on the internet where love was perfectly implemented. What would that look like? Like, it does not envy or boast. It's not arrogant or rude. It doesn't insist on its own way. It's not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices in the truth. It bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things, right? When we talk to our young people, we need a clear standard for our tech use. Now we have one for the content we consume and the way we act online, but also the why we act online. There's going to be stuff we walk away from. There's going to be good things that aren't the best things, right? Urgent things that are actually important things. And we're going to prayerfully, intentionally engage those and also not engage those, which brings us to the third, how it affects us. Sometimes there are really good things that just aren't for us. And basically, Galatians 5:22 sets us out. What fruit is it bringing out? Reset again picks up on this, but here's our biblical standard for that. If my child goes and plays a game, that's fine. It's not morally wrong. We've cleared it as a family. They're really consistent. They've earned this opportunity, but it doesn't produce love and joy and peace and patience and kindness. It stirs up some unhealthy stuff in them, and it starts to become habit, and it starts to become more permanent. And we go, you know what? This isn't making our child more of who God's made him to be. We're actually getting less of our kiddo when they come away from this thing. Then this is our biblical standard for going, all right, it's not good. Maybe we don't know all the words. Maybe we don't know why, but we know our kiddo, we love them deeply, and we know that there is something good for them out there. So we're going to intentionally dive into that, right? The goal here is not simply to have less tech that doesn't make us better. The standard isn't avoid tech and then our kids will be fine. We had a pair of world wars before digital tech was a thing. So we need to recognize that this is a hard issue at the end of the day. We're trying to choose the best tech. And in this conversation, it's what tech most lines up with our conversation for what our summer goals are. And let's start there with our kiddos and bring them into this conversation as well. So thank you guys. Just a reminder, we're going to prep our tech based on our priorities. We're going to talk it out and we're going to walk it out. All right.
I wish I had an applause button. Yeah, the crowd goes wild. Oh, Nathan, I when I first found your podcast, I was like, this is so good. I was just consuming and consuming and consuming. And then, God was like, ask him to come talk to your families. I'm like, oh, he's a big deal. He's a big guy. He's not gonna do that. His stuff's so good. And you were just amazing. I mean, it really, really valuable. I am so, so thankful for the way that you share the practical tips and just plant these seeds with families. We all know that families that are ignoring this are going to end up with such struggle and such strife and such lost kids for so, so long. So I so applaud, you mamas that made the time to be here today and to consume this. And I'm very prayerful and hopeful that it will fall into the homes and we can use it as a resource, consistently over and over for our families. So really, really good.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Do you guys have any specific questions for Nathan before we turn it over to Caden? I think that some of you already have Bark, and so I'm not sure how many questions you'll have in that space, but I'd love to first just give you a chance to share or ask any questions of Nathan. The podcast.
I see what's the podcast here. Let me stop my share because I'll still have access to the let me just I got a couple links here. So I thought, are you guys still there? Did I lose you? No, good. You.
Can you guys see, this is your website, right, Nathan?
That's my website, gospeltech.net.
There we go.
So if you just look up Gospel Tech Podcast, that is where to find it. And I'm recognizing now that this, I'll grab the links. I had hyperlinks, but it doesn't like them. So let me grab these and I'll just drop kind of 3 introductory ones. If you want places to start, that could be helpful, I guess. And I'll put those in the chat so you can find those.
They're fantastic. And it's on Audible and Apple and
Spotify and Google Play and all the things with the stuff.
All the places. Yeah. So you'll definitely want to subscribe. And any other questions from anyone before we on? Okay. You answered all so many so well.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry, Caden. I went over time.
No, you're fine, but that was way more. No, I'll just say this: way more impactful in the way you speak. But now we're gonna go to the tools, I guess, that you can use.
I'm pumped up. I'm glad everyone gets to hear from you.
Yeah, so Caden is here to talk. I think some of you have been in some of our Valor retreats and spaces of that point, but Caden's going to talk a little bit about, Kristen, do you have Bark? No? Okay. And Jessica, I don't remember if we've worked with you on it or not. Okay. Then it probably would be good, Caden, for you to just do kind of a quick overview of what you do and then the spaces of how to get set up.
Yeah, so let me do this. Let me go ahead. I'm going to do my quick presentation. So I'm going to kind of give the overview. But since I think it's Jessica and Kirsten, we can actually ask a couple of questions about devices specifically and things for your family that I feel that we could get a better, at least some better knowledge about. So let me go ahead and share my screen first here and get the right screen up. And apologies, guys, if you see this tissue coming up. It's the worst times possible where you bite your lip and it starts bleeding. So if you see me doing this, that's why. All right, and do here and share. All All right, so what is Bark? And to really get to the background of what Bark was created for, our CEO, Brian Basin, started out at Bark because he worked at Twitter before, so big tech company, right? But saw that his two sons who were growing up were getting onto that platform and the things that were being found on that platform, and no real knowledge and no real way to protect, or at least know what was happening on the platform itself. So Bark was started as a initiative from Brian Basin, the CEO, of like, hey, I used to work at Twitter. I know what happens on these platforms. How do I protect my kids? So Bark was created to be a tool to help parents keep kids safer. Educational resources to help parents navigate raising kids in the digital age. We work on two sides. So like what you already have right now with Valor is the partnership on the school accounts. So monitoring and protecting on the school issued Gmail, Google Drive, chats, things like that. Along with that, we also do it on the family side. So we actually help protect when it comes to text messages, social media, all the different platforms, computers, the video games that we know have chats included inside of them. At this point, 5.3 million children protected. We've helped to prevent 16 school shootings. I think that's grown over the years, but we want to be safe with that. But it's just something, we built this to help save lives and help save kids and also keep kids protected from what we know is there's good in technology, there's bad in technology. Just like Einstein saying, hey, I'm going to create a really cool nuclear thing that will help with energy, but somebody used that to do something else with it, which we call a nuclear bomb. So the good and the bad of technology, inventions, things like that. But it's really the big goal in the end of the day is have a healthy relationship and a healthy partnership between kids and parents and their children, I should say, and how we navigate this weird digital online world that we now are still learning from. And we think it's, we think it's been around for forever, but again, these things are all new. Everything's so fast. Everything's happening so quick. There's technology, new platforms. You hear of Snapchat, there's going to be a new Snapchat like 3 days down the road, a new platform that kids are using at that point. So what it comes down to and what we are looking to do, and I like to get the background of what Bark monitors, and Nathan talked about this a lot. It's not just an overarching, if you think of 1984 Big Brother type situation. Yes, we are monitoring the content. Yes, we are looking at social media posts. Yes, we are looking at certain text messages that your child may be sending. But there's a level of privacy that the kid will still feel, your child will still feel, and when worrisome content comes through, profanity, images of sexual content itself, getting to the higher level. I hate to talk about this, but stuff like self-harm, suicide, if it's even from your child or another child who's talking to them about that, that's the areas that we're going to alert you on and actually give you knowledge to have conversations with your child instead of just looking at every single one. We know at this day and time, there's no possibility for you to read in every single text message that comes through. I can barely keep track of my text messages, so I don't think I could do it for a child or somebody else. Another level of that is web browsing. So we've got the internet, again, that phone that may not be connected to Wi-Fi, it still has the ability to access through data. So you actually get the ability to monitor worrisome content that may happen on those websites with those web browsers. Pictures and videos that are saved to the device. Again, where you're pulling that image from, where it's placed on the device itself, just at least some insight. Again, if we find something worrisome, something that you would want to know about, it gives that open area for you to have that conversation, that piece to create that conversation at the end of the day. Along with that, email, social media, and a list of new apps. So apps that are downloaded. There's new apps created, like I mentioned before. New Snapchat's probably going to come a week down the road. List of new apps, new things that are out there, things that you should keep an eye on. Not that they're all bad, not that or good or bad, but you should know about and have the ability to check and say, hey, what is this? What is this app? Is this something you can show me? Let's see. Let's look at it together. So when it comes to monitoring, and this really comes down to the family side of things on the account level, and especially as we get into summer, probably kids aren't going to be using their student account or student issued accounts as much, right? So account level monitoring is where we get to stuff like social media or email accounts. We do require the ability to, or like the option for a child to help in sharing this information. We do need the child's credentials to connect. So that's the login information, email and password. But we do, again, send a text message. You have the ability to send a text message to your child to have that shared kind of conversation of like, hey, this is what Bark is going to do. This is what we're looking at. Again, a conversation starter, mainly as a safety piece, but that's how you would connect things on the account level side of things. device level, and I'm guessing, and I'll ask this question here in just a little bit. We know, I think it's about 70% of children are using iOS devices or iPhones, and then 30% are using Android devices. I'm guessing, and actually, if you don't mind me asking the question, what are your children using at this point? Do they have iOS devices? Are they using Android, or is it just computer? And feel free to come off mute or just throw it in the chat. iOS, yeah.
She just has her computer for school and has no desire for anything else.
Gotcha. Which we can also talk about here. But again, device monitoring comes down to the things that are actually the things that happen on the device itself. So activities directly from the device, text messages. So that's iOS. That's going to be regular SMS, and also the iMessages that are included. Pictures and videos, like I mentioned. So those pictures that are stored on the device itself, but you can grab from anywhere on the internet. But again, a lot of times children will save those to their device to share later on in a text message or other social media platforms. And at the bottom level, the big thing for me is that web browsing. You have access to Google Chrome, Safari on iOS devices. Like there's always that access to the internet if there's a data connection, or if they're just connected to the Wi-Fi on a plane or a phone that doesn't even have data itself. There's always that connection to the internet somewhere. So that's the kind of extra level of protection. And again, I have to make this concrete. We like this to be a shared kind of responsibility between both parents and children of like, hey, this is a device. There are risks out there. There are things that you're going to run into. What Bark is trying to do is give us some knowledge of what you're looking at, but not take away whole privacy element. So you need to experience the world. You need to experience the internet. You're going to get to a point where you're going off to college and you need every single one of these devices. You need all this. You need all this information, and it's required now. But it's more of just digital citizenship, understanding. Just like when my parents said, "Don't put your hand on the stove," and then I put my hand on my stove and I burn myself. You got to learn somehow, and you're going to learn sometimes through pain, but also maybe those situations where you say, "Hey, what you just looked at here, let's talk about this." And that's one thing that Bark can do, is give you that additional insight to even things that may start at a small level, but that can grow over time. So, and sorry, I got to move some windows out of the way. There's a Bark Kids app on a child's device. So that's going to be, when it comes to, especially for Android devices, that's the big one, but also iOS devices where we give the ability for screen time controls. I really think this comes back to, and Nathan, I love your talk about like the where, when, and which. The where and our Bark Junior on the go controls are probably going to be the best thing to help out here. Sets up screen time rules, bedtime, school time, free time, lets you decide those moments and gives an open access to like, hey, at this time at night, probably not the best thing for you to be jumping onto the Minecraft app or jumping onto Snapchat. It shuts down the internet for only the specific things that you actually want to access at that time, or have them have access to. For me, and I hate to say it, I do like my Spotify to be on so I can listen to white noise so I can fall asleep. But there could be many different things you could set up. You could have it completely off, but you could also allow certain access. And that's the same for those school time rules, those bedtime rules, and the default rules, I guess you could call them, throughout the day. Outside of that, we also have that content monitoring. And let's go down to the iOS devices. I know that's mostly, or at least I forget who had the iOS device. Sorry, Jessica. So this is going to be yeah, so that's going to be mainly for you on this one. We do have the ability to monitor iOS. It's tough. It's tough because we love and hate iOS for a certain reason, or Apple. Apple is very secure. They have a lot of security guidelines, privacy guidelines, but it does make it very hard for a parent to be able to monitor stuff like text messages, notes and videos, downloaded apps, Chrome web browser, Kik and WhatsApp messages. We found a workaround for that gives you that ability. So we actually run what's called our backup of the device. It has to be on a computer. So it's a Windows or Mac computer, but that allows you to get some insight into the activities that are taking place on those devices themselves. It's not instantaneous. It's not completely real time, but what I see it as an insight kind of in a situation like, hey, I know this is the website that you just accessed. I see that there was some worrisome content in a text. Maybe it wasn't even your child's intent, but there's something that may need to be talked about with the child. It's really that insight and understanding of like, okay, this is where they're going. This is what they're seeing. And again, conversation starter. That's the biggest thing for me. And that's why I like Bark so much. It's not the overarching, just like I have to see everything you're doing. It's just, I got to make sure you're protected when you're online, and also in conversations. Again, and that's, I think I'm not a parent myself, but I do remember my old, aging myself, I should say, but not really aging myself. I grew up in the days of MySpace and Facebook, but even back then it was still a concern and we had no tools like this. My parents would just sit over the computer. Anytime I wanted to get on my MySpace, they had to watch me and everything I did. There's not enough time in the day for that. So that's a tool, or at least a resource that BARC gives you, is one, the ability for that. Okay, let them go out and let them actually try these things out. But I know that I have some sort of extra protection over the top to know if I have to have certain conversations or say, hey, is this risky? Is this not risky? Is this a good thing that you're doing? This is probably a bad place to be type of situation. So we'll talk a little bit. I did want to get into kind of the platforms that we monitor. So we did talk about social media and email, Instagram, Snapchat, YouTube, Discord, TikTok. I'm sure there's plenty of more apps that we could add to this list that are concerning. That's the place that we did the best at, I think, is not that we can monitor every single one of these. It depends on the type of device. We'll say for iOS, Instagram, Snapchat, no, we can't monitor the private messages, but we can give you insight if there's new accounts created. We can tell you if it's a certain new account over here that's been created. That's where having that conversation, sitting down and saying, hey, what are you doing on Snapchat? Can I see this thread? The stuff that Nathan was talking about before, I think really comes into play, and how a really good partnership between having the conversations, but also having this extra layer of protection. With that being said, I don't want to waste a bunch of time. I really want to get in with let's see. So I see Lisa's also here, but Kirsten, Jessica, Lisa, where are the main areas you're concerned about, and where BARC could help out, I guess, is the best question I can ask right now. Again, don't have to come up mute, but you want to throw it in the chat either way.
I would say for us, so we have 2 iPads in the home, which are my and John's old iPads. Okay. That the kids basically use for their free choice time. And I think more so for our youngest, he's getting into like wanting to play games he sees stuff on YouTube. So it starts with like, he does YouTube for exercise videos, and then he sees things on there. So I think it would be, even like today, he was like begging me to download a new game. And I'm like, buddy, I don't have time to look at what it is before I just download it. So it would be what package, I guess, it would be more than just one device for us, because they both have their computers, and then it'd be those 2 iPads are mostly what the kids are on.
The great thing about BARC, it's unlimited devices. So don't worry about number of devices, number of children, things like that. iOS devices, I will talk to the iPads. The one thing that you do from the get-go with the iPads is when setting up BARC, you can set up a default profile. If they're sharing the devices, or if they're not distinguished, the same with like if we have a shared like Xbox, right? You can actually use what we call our on-the-go or BARC Junior controls to set up screen time rules and limits. Inside of that, it gives you the ability to block access to the App Store. You can't download something unless you ask mom or dad to look at it, right? And also, along with that, if you wanted to go up to the kind of next level of like the monitoring, is you could also get the monitoring of that web browser. So the web browser on the device itself, if there's access to that internet at certain points. But again, that on-the-go control, the BARC Junior, I think would be the best fit if it's concerned about what's taking place on the device, and if they're setting time limits, things like that. I know Apple has their screen time controls already in place. They're not as customizable, I guess you could say, as what we've created here at BARC, in the way that you could set up those schedules. We have specific categories. If you wanted them to only have access to Minecraft but no other games, there's the toggle inside of the actual app itself on your parent side of things, where you could say, no, I just want Minecraft access at a certain time for maybe like the free time schedule. And again, you can throw in the monitoring side of things. You mentioned your youngest child was getting into, is that on a computer?
So he like our smart TV.
Gotcha.
He pulls up like YouTube for, we do it with like exercise videos, but then sometimes I come through the living room and like, that's not really an exercise video. You're watching a gaming video.
Gotcha. Is it a personal account that they're signed in with, or your child is signed in with, or is it just the account that's signed in on the TV?
Just the Roku account on the TV.
Gotcha. Outside of that, like Nathan mentioned, I don't know too much about the Griffin router. I've heard about it, but there are controls I'm sure you can put on specifically for certain devices inside of the house. We also have, again, and I'll post some links, or I'll have Mindy, if that's okay. I'll send you some information about what the Bark Home does. It does allow the ability for like devices in the house to turn off access to YouTube and keep on access to blah, blah, blah here, right? So I only have access at certain times, same with scheduling and things like that. It's tougher when the account's not completely associated with the child, but there are ways around that. So again, happy to get you some more information on that side of things, but I know the iPads is an area that we could definitely help out in.
Okay, great, thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, so we she doesn't really get onto any devices except for my phone.
Okay.
From time to time, she'll like download free apps, like free phone stuff. And I don't know if that's ruining my phone or whatever, but she probably has 5 or 6. So, but I know they have ads and stuff that are on there that.
I'm sorry, Kirsten. I think you may have muted.
Oh, okay. So the other place she loves to go on is, TV and YouTube, and it's one of those where she can find on that app on the TV different things. And I'm like, okay, so now that we're going to have more time on the TV, is there a way that we can screen, can Bark go in there and go, ooh, that's probably not a great place to be? Or
yeah, well, I'll lay it out this way. So the way that we're able to monitor, and a lot of this is, I'll say device specific when it comes to certain types of things. So, Android device, we can monitor it was an Android phone. So think of like a Samsung, a Google Pixel, things like that. TV's a little bit harder. Like we don't have a dedicated app that we can install on the device itself. We can't do like the backups that we do for an iOS device. I say this, so when they're accessing YouTube on the TV, is there a specific account that they're signing into? Is it a personal account, or is it their account that they own, or is it just something that's already signed into?
Yeah, something's already signed into. It's like my account.
Gotcha. I'd say the best thing at that point is controlling. It's tough to monitor. Like, so the way we monitor like YouTube or specifically apps and social media is specific login credentials. But there is the possibility for the filtering or screen time, again, setting the rules of times you can access this. It's tougher on the TV. I hate to say it that way, but there are some limitations out there and in the way that we are able to monitor. But it doesn't mean you can't put controls or just some safety measures on the back end of specific times that you can set for this time of day that you could be with them to watch it, right? Or have that view or that ability to again sit with them and say, hey, what are we watching right now? What's something that you're interested in? What is it? How can we learn more about what again, going back to Nathan's talk about just like learn more about what they're interested in when it comes to the technology side of things.
Yeah, I love that. That was totally what I was thinking of, was what he said. So just doing things with her more often, and but other than that, she's not on any devices. And so, I'm just trying to be proactive in case it starts to come in.
It's probably at some point they're going to have to be, though. So they'll know that in the back end, right? So you always have that option. And again, it's not preventing, but again, it's just having the extra measures of safety in there. So, and Lisa, I know you just jumped in, Lisa. Any questions? I know we've talked before, but how are things going on your side of things?
Hey, good. Yeah, sorry, I totally lost track of time and started feeding the baby, and so I'll go back and watch the recording, and I'm sure that'll help answer some of the questions I had. So,
Gotcha.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, Mindy, anything else you wanted me to cover on this side of things? I didn't really go too deep into the school monitoring side of things, but I know we're getting into some.
No. I think that's great. A lot of them, they do hear me talking about it, and I'm always kind of going, I'm so passionate about this, and I think it's just because I'm a parent that's had my heart broken because I didn't pay enough attention. And so I just so passionately am impressed that you guys would make the time to be here and get ahead of this and understand, Nathan's point about the pebble. It so quickly becomes that blister, and the healing that is required in our kids' mental health and their walk with Jesus, their friendships, their family, their school, and their education. It just so quickly becomes something that we really have to pause everything else and pay attention to. And, my hope is that these little deposits and this fantastic advice and these tools, and I'm just really thankful that you guys would be here tonight. We will make the recording available to you if you want to share with anyone else. And always just get so much out of spending time with you, Kaden, and appreciate you being here, and Nathan giving his expertise and just service to our Valor families. It just means so much to me. I can like picture all these mamas kiddos, and I'm just thanking God that you care so much to understand the value of this. So thank you all for being here. I think that we don't have any more questions this evening, and I know it's late, and especially where you are, Kaden, and I just am so thankful. So have a wonderful evening, and we'll look forward to sending the follow-up out in the coming week. Thanks, you guys, and God bless you.